All right, so good afternoon to everyone out there. Good afternoon to you. Um, we're taking a second series on our live broadcast for um, today, and we're talking about how to be effective in leadership. Today, we're going to be talking about effective communication or developing effective communication skills. The world at the moment is on a lockdown, as it were. A major part of the world has been shut down because of what we term the coronavirus. Now, this looks like, it's not that it looks like, it's been declared a pandemic and it is world over. But I would just like to take some moments to give a word of encouragement to every one of you out there, which is to say that even though this is a pandemic, it comes with a lot of confusion and crisis, as it were, but you can be certain that the world will overcome this. You can be sure that the world will go past this. And if that be the case, I think that every one of us ought to be encouraged. Every one of us ought to be strengthened about this one fact. By the way, this is not the first time that the world is going through a situation like this. There was a time that cholera invaded the world and it became a pandemic. At that time, I suppose people would have assumed that the world had come to an end. But God, in His mercy and His wisdom, permitted that the earth should continue. There was a time where measles was a situation, and the world battled to even find a healing process for that disease. And it's come to the point where the world has been able to overcome it. And the issue, we've long forgotten about that. So coronavirus, even though comes as a surprise to a lot of us, but I can say for sure and certain that it is a passing phase. One thing is clear and certain about the world or about the situation, and that is that the world will never remain the same again. The world will not operate in the manner that it used to operate. And in that respect, I would want to encourage everyone to make adjustments as quickly as possible and to focus your attention on the nearest possible future. Okay? Things will change. For sure, things will change. But as things change, I would like to ask, will you be ready to change with things? Will you be ready to adapt to the new situations? Will you be able to see the world as a new environment? Okay? So you position yourself to take advantage of the situations in the world. So today, we're going to be talking about effective communication, because as this coronavirus flies around the world, one thing is sure, one thing is certain, which is that a lot of people have had challenges in terms of communication. A lot of people have had challenges in terms of how to relate with other people. I saw this on Instagram about an Italian who said that staying indoors was more terrible for him because his wife nagged and troubled his life. So it was better for him to stay outdoors and remain on the street than to remain 24 hours with his wife at home. I've also read jokes and comments by parents who feel that it has become a bit burdensome to relate with their children because they are having 24 hours with their children together. Well, I would like to say with you, I would like to say to you that if you are able to communicate effectively with your children, if you are able to communicate effectively with your spouse, if you are able to communicate effectively with people around you, then obviously you won't have a trouble, or you won't have trouble or situations arising because of your lockdown or your stay-at-home situation. So I want to emphasize on the need that we all need to have a good means of communication one with another. Let me just at this time pause and appreciate all those who are online. Libaba to Avong, thank you for your comments. I see other persons coming in and out. Mampan, I've seen you coming in and out. Thank you for your time. I would just like to also encourage you to encourage others to watch this live broadcast so that we can be on the same page as far as communication is concerned. So, having said that, let me just ask, of course, since you cannot respond back, but you may be able to respond back, and that is by the comment section. All right, so write in your comments, ask questions, make contributions through the comment sections. I will read them and give feedback as much as I can give feedback as I go through, or as I see your comments coming up from time to time. At the moment, I just have a single comment from Libaba to Avong commending the work that is being done. Thank you again. I appreciate you. Now, so what is communication? What is communication? Because the ability to effectively communicate is essential. It's an essential skill for our world today, particularly with what we are facing at the moment, the coronavirus. I'm sure that you've seen so many comments, so many advice on WhatsApp, on Instagram, on Facebook, telling you what to do at a time like this. All right? I'm sure you've seen so many comments like that. I'm sure also you've seen sarcasm flying across board. All right, some people wishing other people some certain situation, or giving advice that if you think through, you know that this advice will not work. So some other persons have made effort to communicate to us how to keep ourselves safe, but in reality, have they communicated effectively so we can hold on to what they are saying and put to practice what they are saying? Most of the comments I've seen, or most of the issues or write-ups I have seen, have either created fear, all right, or have caused discouragement, okay, to people, rather than encouraging them as to how to overcome the situation. Thank you, Josiah Shekwaga. Thank you, Mercy, Bia, for your comments and for joining online. Libaba to Avong is asking a question: how can a parent have problems spending time with his or her children, and then she hisses? Well, you see, I think that parents think that school or sending children to school is now an escape, all right, from being with members of their family. It's sad, and I agree with you. I do not see a reason why parents will think that being at home with their children is a situation or a problem that they do have. Now, so I was asking, what is effective communication? Okay? Because this is a dynamic process, and how you communicate can send positive messages or negative messages depending on how you communicate. So communication is not just about putting words together and sending them out. Communication is about passing a message from one person onto the other. So in other words, if you speak, okay, words to people and they do not send the right message, or they do not say the things that you want to say, even though you have spoken, whether it's English, Spanish, French, Baju, Atiab, whatever you may have spoken, you may have assumed that you've done or you've communicated effectively, but because of so many factors, the person on the receiving end didn't get the message the way that you thought the message should have been communicated. Okay? So communication is not just about putting words together. It is about sending the right message to the other party. A lot of us will recall, if you are a keen follower of the political situation in our country, Nigeria. Okay, so I'm broadcasting from Nigeria, and that's just for persons who will need to know. Ayuba Barrow, thank you for coming online. Dr. Willie, thank you. Thank you for following, and thank you also for your prayer, and I thank you for the good wishes. So, as I was saying, we used to have a member of the House of Representatives, Senator Ogbaibon, who, whenever he got up to speak, every member of the House paid attention, because there was something comical that would come from his statements. Not because he was a comedian, but because he had a strange way of bringing words that you've never heard of and putting them together to form sentences. In fact, there were so many times that people listened to him but didn't know what he was talking about. Even though he spoke Queen's English, spoke with high-sounding words, he was full of certain vocabularies, yet not everybody understood what he was saying, because for him, speaking was just probably a matter of bringing in words together and saying what he wanted to say. And most times he thought he communicated with people, but my assessment of him is the fact that he didn't communicate. He simply spoke, but never communicated. So, effective communication is a good skill for us, whether at work, at home, in church, in the mosque. And you can imagine going to a place of worship and someone standing before you and attempting to preach to you certain things, and the person ends up wasting your time because he or she may have a message but may be unable to effectively communicate the message onto you. Okay? Maybe effectively may find it difficult to get you to understand what he or she is saying. And once the recipient of your message does not understand what you are saying, it simply means that you have not effectively communicated. Ayuba Barrow, you are asking a question, sir. Please, where is the place of faith in this situation? Because there is fear everywhere and panic. People tend to forget their faith in God. Of course, my guess is you are talking about the pandemic that we're facing. All right, that is my guess. If I'm wrong, then it means you have not communicated effectively to me, and that's what we're talking about today. But if you're talking about the pandemic situation, now, there is something that a lot of us forget. Okay? Faith is not some random situation. Okay? Faith is not action away from sense. There is a reason why God has given to every one of us a brain. And there is a reason why your brain and my brain are independent, which is that God has given us brains so we can reason. And in this situation, it has been discovered that the best way to curtail this virus from flowing, from affecting more people, is for people to stay away from each other for some time. Okay? If you claim that because of faith, you will then go to someone who has a virus and live with the person or stay with the person, you are endangering yourself. You are actually tempting God. Okay? You are actually... But if you keep away for some time until the virus passes by, then you can be sure that you have applied faith, and applied faith alongside wisdom. That's what I would say to you, Ayuba Barrow, and to every other person who has similar thought. So, back to the main issue. What is effective communication? From some dictionary definition, it says effective communication is imparting or exchanging information by speaking, writing, or using some other medium and means of sending or receiving information, such as telephone lines, computers, and so on and so forth. All right? So that's the Google definition of what effective communication is. Again, Collins Dictionary says it is an act of or an instance of communicating, the imparting or exchanging of information, ideas, or feelings. Okay? While the Oxford Dictionary says effective communication is imparting or exchanging information by speaking, writing, or using some other medium. Well, that is what effective communication is. So, from what we've read in these definitions, or from what I've mentioned by these definitions, what it simply means is that it is not just the words that you speak, but how you say it, why you are saying the words, when you are saying the words, and what you do not even say. All this tend to communicate with people out there. For those of us in Nigeria, you know, there was a time where the phrase body language was very popular. And it was in reference to one of the presidents that we've had in Nigeria. Many people then described him as having spoken one word, but that his body language communicated something differently. Okay? In other words, and I'm not talking about whether that is right or well, I'm not talking about whether that situation or that scenario was proper or not. What I'm pointing out is the fact that you may speak certain words, but your body language may communicate something else. All right? So, communication also has to do with your body language. Thank you, Michael Tukura, for joining. Thank you also, Shekwaga, for your comments. I trust that you will follow through even till the end of this broadcast. So, like I was saying, effective communication goes beyond mere words. What you say, when you say it, how you say it, and even how you move, all team up in sending a message to the person on the receiving side. And of course, you've got to have all these factors coming together for you to be said to be communicating effectively. And that is very, 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 very necessary. Now, there are certain things that can stop us from effectively communicating with one another. Okay? Thank you, Michael Tukura. I'm getting the answer that is rising inside of me. Thank you, Tukura. I appreciate you and I appreciate your comment. Thank you also. So, like I was saying, there are certain factors that can hinder us from effectively communicating with one another. Okay? And the first factor is our refusal to pay attention to the person who is talking. You see, many a times we tend to want to be in a hurry to respond to people when they are talking to us. We never want to listen to people conclude their comments and statements, especially in a debate. Okay? We just want to be in a rush and in a hurry to pick out pitfalls, shortfalls from their comments so that we can quickly respond to them. Okay? Many a times we raise up the walls of defenses when we are being advised. Okay? Because we've made up our minds over certain things that we want to say. So when someone is speaking to us to counter what we made up our minds to do or to say, we raise up a wall of defense. We do not listen to the other person. We hear them speak, but we do not listen to them. In fact, sometimes we interpret or help them interpret what they are saying while they are saying it. And many a times, while we do that, the interpretations are wrong, okay, as against what the person is talking about. So, to people effectively, actively, we raise up a wall of defense, and that ensures or causes that our communication is ineffective and we do not understand what has been communicated to us. Another factor is that we easily judge people. There are days that we listen to broadcast on TV, and long before the person has started to broadcast, we have made up our minds about what the person wants to say. In cases, all right, crimes, criminal cases, we judge the persons once they have been presented as having done or said certain things. And let me give an example in that respect. Most of us know that famous singer called R. Kelly. Okay? At the moment, even though it's doused down a bit, R. Kelly has been under intense pressure about ladies from across the United States of America who are claiming that he's either harassed them sexually, or he's raped them, or has done some inhumane things to them. Now, the tendency is that a number of us have tended to believe what the ladies say, or the several ladies have said. And so, once R. Kelly began to raise a defense, a number of people simply who had judged him didn't have time to listen to what he was saying. Okay? For every word he said, they simply lifted the word and countered it with what a lady had mentioned. And the logic in what he has said, we have ignored. And the illogical statement by some other ladies, we have grabbed onto. I'm not saying R. Kelly is right or wrong. I'm just using it as an example to point out that many a times we judge people even before they begin to make their comments or statements. All right? In heated situations, when certain persons have been fingered out or pointed out or accused of certain things, we do not wait to hear what the people say, because in our hearts and our minds we've judged them already, and from our perspective they can never say anything right. And if that be the case, then it means that we will continually mistake the communication or fail to understand the communication by which that person has tried to reach out to us. Now, another means is by using what I may term as maybe high sounding or technical language, yes, or technical vocabularies. I shared an example a while ago of a member of the House of Representatives of the National Assembly of Nigeria, of a legislator who delighted in speaking fantastic words, words that were not used as everyday words. They were right words. They can be found in the dictionary. But the truth is, not many people knew the words that Patrick Ogbaibon spoke. They were high-sounding words, words that didn't communicate to the ordinary man on the street. In fact, his words didn't even communicate to the legislators who were with him in the chambers. So many a times they waited for him to speak so they would laugh, because whenever he put words together, they ended up sounding like comic relief to a lot of people. Of course, the reason being that he was speaking high tending words. As a lawyer, I know that there are certain places that once I speak in legal terms, a lot of people will not understand what I'm saying. A lot of people will not understand the things that I'm putting out there to them because I'm simply using technical terms. Have you ever seen how, or have you ever read or understood a medical doctor's prescription? No. Many a times we do not understand. So we simply take his prescription to the pharmacy, and then the pharmacist reads and interprets and then produces the drugs that drugs that have been prescribed to us. And when you read those drugs in English, they are simple words. But sometimes the medical doctor goes so technical that, you know, like someone once said, that even if you went in with a mild illness to the hospital, by the time the medical doctor speaks a technical term, the sickness increases. It multiplies in size. Why? Because the medical doctor was speaking technical terms and couldn't effectively communicate with the patient. Okay? Some other times, the reasons why communication is not effective is because we tend to enter or poke our noses into situations that do not concern us. Okay? When you are not sure of how somebody feels, do not make an effort to give an advice. Because there are times and situations that people don't listen to you. There are times and situations that, okay, for example, someone is bereaved, and you go there to speak things that are not even communicated or are not connected to the situation that the person has found himself. That person will not understand you. When I am bereaved and I feel bitter about what has just happened to me, it will not be an appropriate time for you to talk business with me. It won't be communicating. You will not come across as someone who understands what I'm feeling, and I will not understand what you are saying, because that moment is not a moment where I should be listening to business. Okay? So, do not give advice when you have not been asked to give any advice. Do not come into a situation that you have not been called into. All right? Do not be what we call in the courts a meddlesome interloper. All right? Many years ago, someone gave a judgment and described someone who had no situation in the matter, but then went to court. All right? The judges described him as a meddlesome interloper, someone who interloped when he didn't have a business to make a comment or to come into the case. So do not be a meddlesome interloper when you go to communicate with people. Then, of course, in any conversation, do not avoid the concerns of others. Okay? When you communicate to me about how hot the sun is, and my concern at that moment is about my hunger, do not turn a blind eye to what I am trying to mention to you. Okay? Do not turn a blind eye to what I'm trying to say to you. Because if I'm hungry, I won't understand what you are saying about the sun. Because the sun is not my concern at that moment. So I encourage you, okay, that of these things I've mentioned that tend to maybe truncate or tend to scuttle effective communication with people. At this time, let me pause and say that for those of you who are online, I appreciate you for taking time to be online. I appreciate you for spending or burning your data to listen to this little lesson that I have. And I will encourage you to also tag this on and send across to other people who can be online and also watch what we're talking about. And then if you have questions, please post the questions via the comment section, and I will look at the questions and respond to them as far as this situation is concerned. So please, thank you for being online, and I appreciate you for joining me to hear me talk about effective communication. So as I continue, let me just quickly share some of the skills that are necessary if you want to have effective communication. Onuche, thank you. You are welcome. Thank you so much for being online. I noticed that you are a keen follower, and I appreciate you for this. Again, just in line with that, we're making it as a routine now to come online every Wednesday at 1 p.m. We'll be discussing several topics. All right. Last week we talked about how to effectively use your time, how to maximize your time. Today we're talking about effective communication. Next week, by the grace of God, we'll be talking about how to be a leader, an effective leader under crisis. Like we mentioned earlier on, the world is going through a crisis situation, and it is at moments like this that we find out those who are effective leaders. And so next week we will be talking about effective leadership under crisis situation. But today we're talking about how to communicate effectively. Baba, to thank you for coming back online. Thank you also to Kura for your comment about this segment. So let's continue, even as I give us the basic skills, 10 in number, and probably you may have other skills as to how to effectively communicate with people. The first of these skills is to be an active listener. What do I mean when I say that you be an active listener? The first thing that I mean is for you to listen, and to listen really good. Sorry, Shekwagwa, you don't seem to be having sound. I'm not sure that there's anything wrong with the sound. If there's anyone out there, well, if there's no sound, there's no way you would understand what I'm saying. But I think you should check your device. Probably check your device to find out if the error is from you. Like I was saying, the first step is to be an active listener. What do I mean by that? And like I said, it means that first of all, you must listen, and listen very well. You must listen whether in a debate or a family communication. Thank you, Willie, for confirming that sound is effective or is perfect. Thank you so much. So Chicago, I suggest that you check your device. Probably the sound issue is from your device. So the first step is that you must listen, whether in a debate, family communication, in your workplace. You must listen not to counter the person who is speaking. That is what it means to be actively listening. You listen not to counter the person. Rather, you listen to understand what the person is saying. You listen twice as much as you would want to speak. Okay? The Holy Book says that it is good to be quick to listen and slow to speak. Slow to speak. What does it mean? It just means that in communicating with people, unless you pay keen attention to what someone says, you may miss the point that the person is trying to pass across to you. And I would dare say that the reason why we have 2 ears and 1 mouth is so we can listen more and speak less. So when you listen to people, make sure that your 2 ears are tuned to the person speaking. That your 2 ears are not distracted. That they are focused on what the person is saying, and they are focused so you can understand what the person is saying. That's what it means to be an active listener. You must listen with your whole body. You must have interest and be alert at what the person is saying. While we were growing up, and I'm sure a number of us did that, okay? There were times when, as probably teenagers, we wanted to be naughty and so on. So when our parents gave us instructions, rather than carry out the instructions, the first thing we did was to respond, "What did you say?" And you could have said it in several ways. You just say, "Eh?" And your parents got angry. In situations like that, what it probably meant is that you were distracted when your parents were communicating with you. You were distracted when someone was talking to you. Thank you, Shekwaga. You have fixed your sound. It's okay. Thank you also to Kora for reaffirming that the sound is good. Okay? So, if you get distracted when someone speaks to you, the truth is that you have not actively listened. When you raise up the fence or a wall of defense against someone speaking to you, the truth is you have not actively listened to what the person is saying to you. Let me quote Ralph Nichols on what he says concerning active listening. He says, the most basic of all human needs is the need to understand and be understood. The best way to understand people is to listen to them. So for you to effectively have good communication, you must be an active listener. Thank you, Saminu Monday, for joining. God bless you, even for your comments. So, you must be an active listener. And I ask you today, and you see, I think this is where most husbands and wives have situations. All right? As a man, I can tell you, there are days that I have quickly assumed what my wife wanted to say to me. And I've built up a response in my heart already. And so, as soon as she speaks, whether it is not in the manner that I had expected that she would speak, I just send out a response. And that thing usually angered my wife until I got to understand that to be able to effectively communicate with her, I needed to listen more, all right, and to listen actively to her. Then I could give a response that was appropriate. In fact, there were days that I noted that there was also no need to, because I had listened very well and carefully to the things that she said. And I praise my wife also because she's grown to that point also where I realize that there are days that I speak and there are times that she just thinks this does not matter. It does not require a response. Thank you, Saminu Monday. I just realized I don't listen to myself or sometimes, or I don't listen to people sometimes. I just hear it and pass. Okay, so he's just realized that he doesn't listen to his wife sometimes. He just hears it and passes comments or pass on. Well, thank you that you are learning something new, or perhaps something you've always known but never practiced. And I encourage you to do that. And I say that to the wives also. Listen very well to your husband, because active listening gives room for good and effective communication. Okay? Another factor that can be helpful in active communication is the need to ask questions. So, there are times that our fellow workers or business partners make comments and we do not appropriately understand what they have said. There are times that our superiors in places of work give instructions and we do not clearly understand the instructions that they have passed across. And rather than ask questions, perhaps because of fear of being termed to be someone who does not understand, or because we want to prove that we have listened actively, we walk away and carry out instructions contrary to the things that we have been told to do. In situations like that, we end up offending the person communicating to us. We end up sending a wrong signal as against doing the right thing. Now, in situations where you do not understand what the other person has said, please feel free to ask questions. You may be insulted, okay, for asking questions, but you will not be insulted for failing to do what your question or the answer to your question has said for you to do. In other words, to effectively communicate, to understand communication, you must ask questions. When you are conversing with someone and you show interest, okay, ask the right questions. Questions that tend to ask, what are you saying? How do you want me to do this? Okay? When do you want me to do this? Be specific about the things that you are saying. Okay? So it is appropriate for you to do what? To ask questions so as to understand the other person and the person understands you. Okay? Onuche is asking a question just to clarify, sir. Okay, it's not a question. I think it's a comment. Just to clarify, sir, are there instances where we should be quick to disregard or correct or counter politely, e.g., if we truly know the other person speaking is wrong or misinformed? Well, in situations like that, you have to first of all listen to what the person is saying and be sure you have gotten the person right. It is rude to break someone when he or she is making an effort to communicate to us. It is rude, okay? It is inappropriate to jump in when someone has not concluded what he or she is saying, okay? And distract the person from what he or she is trying to pass across to us. Okay? So, you see, one of the things that happens is that if you interrupt me when I'm talking and you say a thing, I could quickly deny that that wasn't what I was aiming to say. I could quickly, from your comments, divert into something else from what I had initially intended to say, perhaps to just please you or to be on the same page with you. So do not interrupt people when they are communicating. Do not jump into their comments. Do not force words into their mouths. Allow them to finish speaking and to say the things that they have in mind to say. That way you will listen, so that even if they are wrong in terms of the information they have passed across, you are able to effectively correct them. You are able to help them to be corrected so that they won't go out saying things that are inappropriate. Okay? So that's in response to the question coming from Onuche, and thank you for the questions. And there's room for more questions. If you have any question, just post it on the comment section. I will look at it, I will read the questions, and then I will try as much as possible to respond to the questions as best as I can with the necessary information that is available to me. So we're talking about asking questions, and I said you've got to ask questions where you do not understand what is being said. Okay? Ensure that your questions do not also offend the people speaking, because in that situation, you may be, if not, you may not be passing the right question, or may not be effectively communicating with the person who you are asking the question to, or who is asking you a question. All right. Thirdly, is that you must be clear and brief. Okay? When you are speaking with anybody or even writing, okay, you must be clear, you must be concise, you must be brief. I've learned this in a business school where my partner would say, a few friends, that less is more. Okay? Especially when it comes to speaking, when it comes to writing. Less is more. The Holy Book says, in a multitude of words, sin is found. Sin abounds. And what does that mean? When you speak too many words, you end up either confusing people, or you end up exaggerating things that you were talking about. And in such situations, you have miscommunicated with the persons. If you exaggerate any story, you have miscommunicated. If you speak too many words, you end up confusing people. So, the fewer your words, the concise your words are, the better it is for you to effectively communicate with another person. Okay? Now, again, there are situations where we make communications non-verbally. I remember as a young man, whenever we went visiting, whenever we had a visitor at home, okay, and our parents delighted in buying soft drinks for the visitors. As young children, we usually maneuvered our way around those visitors, hoping that any one of them will take the soft drink and pass on the remainder to us, okay, so we could drink. Or that we hung around, played around these visitors, waiting and hoping that they gave us money or shared some gifts with us. And in such situations, my mother in particular will look at you in a particular way with her eyes. In that instance, she was communicating for you to take off from that environment or else get in trouble. And you know what? Many a times we rightly interpreted what she was talking about, because she communicated not with words, she communicated with her eyes, and we knew what she meant. Whenever our parents were happy, we knew from the eyes. Okay? Whenever they were sad, we knew by that way. Okay? So, non-verbal communication is also good that we take note of. Let me just pause and read Saminu's comment. Thank you, Saminu. If a person is disseminating an information you know is not truth and you know is misleading, is it safe to interrupt or allow him to flow to the end? Thank you. Yes, Saminu, the best is to allow the person land, to allow the person communicate or speak to the end. And when the person has finished speaking, one word could just silence the person. And that is by telling the person, this isn't correct. This isn't true. And of course, if the person tries to debate the situation, you can bring out your facts to prove to the person what you are speaking about. But do not interrupt the person while the person speaks. Okay? Because, again, quick answers or harsh answers or harsh responses ignite quarrels. And I'm not sure that in communicating you want to quarrel with anybody. I just know that you want to pass across a message to the person while you and the person are communicating. So do not interrupt the person while the person is communicating with you, because it will be inappropriate. All right. So thank you, Saminu, for the comments, and thank you also for your appreciation. Thank you, Kenneth Adamu, for sharing this live video. I appreciate what you are doing, and I pray that the good Lord will bless you, even as many people tend to listen to this short moment of teaching, or at least enlightening ourselves as far as effective communication is concerned. So we've talked about non-verbal communication. So again, if you are communicating non-verbally, you've got to send the right signals. I would encourage that your actions match your words, because that is how people of integrity behave world over. So once you're communicating, let your non-verbal communication match or marry the words that you are speaking from your lips. If, for example, again, let me share an example. Growing up, I tended to be a bit stubborn, as it were, and I had a dad who is a firm disciplinarian, very firm disciplinarian. Okay? Now, he really beat his children, but every time that my dad promised he would beat me, he did. There was not a single time that my father promised to beat me that he didn't beat me. And you see what? Every time that he promised to do that, his face told me. Okay? So, even though it's not a pleasant example to share at this moment, but he communicated effectively as far as discipline is concerned. So, for a parent, for example, I'm not advocating that you begin to mete out discipline where discipline is not necessary. But what I'm saying is that your non-verbal communication must match up with your verbal communication. All right? To be able to send the right signals to people. What other ways can we communicate effectively?